Hello everyone, and welcome to another devlog for my action-adventure game, Bottled Sky, where your best friend is a giant drill. This month, the team and I have been busy creating some new basic abilities for the shuttle. I also showcased Bottled Sky at our third public event, where we got a bunch of playtesters and some valuable feedback. The team's focus has been very split on different tasks, so while we have a few new features to talk about, many things are still unfinished and less polished than what I usually like to show off. That includes content I showed in last month's video. I'd like to show off the bottery enemy once it's finished, but it still requires a lot of work before I'm ready to do that. Instead, I'll just show off all of the completely new stuff. Let's start off strong with this new backflip ability. I know it's actually a loop-de-loop, but I feel like backflip communicates the motion closely enough and it's easier to say, so that's what I'll likely call it in-game. The backflip has so far gone through a few iterations of what it will actually do, and will likely go through more, but for now the main use for this ability is to avoid attacks for a short duration. The window of invulnerability is very generous, so it's very easy to use to dodge single attacks, but may not be too useful against a consistent barrage of attacks. This is a bit like the classic dodge roll you see in games like Dark Souls, but one major difference is that you don't end up in a different position at the end of the dodge, so you can't use it to close the gap to an enemy. I would like to add a reward for successfully dodging attacks. Initially, I was thinking this could somehow deflect attacks, but I think visually this might be confusing, so my other idea is I could refill the boost gauge. This is something I could revisit later once there is more content in the game. Visually, there's still plenty of polish needed before I'm happy with it, but I like how this ability is making use of the third dimension to dodge attacks, and the visual effects associated with it are doing a good job of making players second guess whether or not this is a 2D or 3D game. That's enough about the backflip, but speaking of visuals, I'd like to show off a few new odd job additions from the artist. Last video, I mentioned that the artist wanted to update the art style to all foreground objects to use a thicker line style to help stand out against the now more vibrant background. All of the shuttle sprites have been updated with the new art style. The asteroid has also been updated, but we now have 12 different variations instead of just having one sprite. A few unique asteroid designs have also been created, but I haven't yet added them into the game, and it may be a while before I do so as there are more pressing things to work on. The Botteries animations have also been completed, but have not yet been added into the game. The previous two enemies we made do not yet have updated visuals though. I also got the artist to add in more assets for the background. In the last video, I talked about how I wrote documentation for the background object system, and it seems to have worked well as I had minimal to no input in the process of adding in new assets. I did want them to try and make more assets than just planets, but it brought up the need for me to do more updates to the system and documentation. Lastly, months ago they made a mock-up animation of what a healing animation could look like for the health bar. I used the mock-up as a guide to create this effect myself via code, which was largely necessary because the start and end size of the health bar needed to be dynamically animated. Finally, let's talk about my favorite feature this month, which is the drill launch ability. The drill launch is an ability that lets you launch whatever object you're drilling forwards. I don't have it built in yet, but ideally this is an attack that deals damage. If the launched object hits something else, then the launched object and the object it collided with will take damage. Of course, this is a game where both gathering and combat is done via the drill, which means you can also perform the drill launch on enemies and have them slam into other enemies. This ability was actually something I created in the old version of Bottled Sky before we decided to start from scratch at the beginning of this series. Thankfully, I used to record lots of clips of features as they were being built, so I had plenty of references to recreate the drill launch. This month, when we started creating the backflip ability, the question came up asking what happens if players use the backflip while drilling. It made sense that we would need to knock away whatever you're drilling due to how the backflip just returns the shuttle back to its original position when it started the backflip. This eventually led to the idea that this would trigger the drill launch ability. Since then, however, I've actually removed the backflip from the drill launch for two reasons. Reason one is having a conflict between what should be the focus of the action. When you do a backflip, the shuttle is doing a cool stunt, and so the camera and all of the visual effects are built around making the shuttle the center of attention. But with the drill launch, the focus is on the object being launched. I couldn't find many good clips of the camera panning and zooming out to keep the launched object on screen, but that's how it used to work, and that's what I want to recreate. The shuttle does also need to still be on screen so that the player can still react to anything happening nearby. But if this was an animation rather than a game, I would definitely have the camera focus entirely on the launched object. When the shuttle is doing a backflip at the same time, I felt that these two abilities were fighting for my attention, which can sometimes work, but I didn't like it here, and that leads me to my second reason for removing the backflip when drill launching. When you do a backflip, you lose control of the shuttle entirely for nearly a whole second. Couple that with not actually traveling any distance in that time, then it feels like the follow-through is missing. I know this isn't a perfect analogy, but imagine throwing a ball. Your hand is the shuttle and the ball is the launched object. When the ball leaves your hand should also continue moving. If you try to abruptly stop your hand, that is ultimately a less satisfying experience and leaves you feeling you could have thrown the ball faster and further if you had just followed through. Visually, this isn't so much of a problem because the backflip animation still has a lot of motion, but gameplay-wise, I missed the forward momentum. Anyway, I think it's time to wrap up this video. If you enjoyed it, then leave a like and subscribe if you want to be notified of future videos. Check the links in the description below if you'd like to follow the game on social media or join the community Discord server. I'll be back with another video next month. Thanks for watching, that's all for now, and I'll see you later.